It's Bourbon Blog Live. We're here with my good friend, Adam Spiegel. He is the founder and head whiskey maker at Sonoma Distilling Company there in the Sonoma region of California. We're going to try some of your delicious and award-winning whiskeys. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, it's great to see you. We've had a lot of fun over the years at all kinds of craft spirits conventions, and I was out there. We were just saying several years ago at your distillery, and now you're just not too long ago moved into an even bigger space, right?
Yeah, we've grown up. I mean, it's been really been a growth for the last 10 years, but the last 5 has really accelerated in terms of our capacity to make. Our new facility opened up. First started about 784 square feet. Now we're at 21,000 square feet. So literally 10 years of this sort of nice growth. And our new space it's comfortable, but it's lively. I mean, I've got a staff of 7 who are just running around like crazy people, just trying to keep up with our whiskey production. It's a really exciting time. Excellent.
And I see a lot of people joining us right now on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. If you have any questions for Adam or for myself about the products, or maybe you've had some of the whiskeys, or just you're having a whiskey right now, tell us what you're having and what you've tried. And I started off with it's a little warm here today, so I had some. I'll put the bourbon in a tasting glass, but I'm having a little bourbon on the rocks here.
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm gonna get started on that too. It's a Monday, so I figure.
Yes. Delicious bourbon, and you've won a number of awards for your whiskeys, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, we admittedly have tried to keep our award submissions fairly low, just because at the end of the day, you could submit all day long, and then it's just like you're constantly either placing or not placing, and it's like one judge loves you, another one hates you, and it's like at the end of the day, I really just my judge is the clients and the people, right. And we've taken a couple year hiatus, but prior to that, yeah, we were winning some in the 90s, and best of shows. We won best of show at ACSA several years ago, and we just, being a whiskey focused distillery in Sonoma County affords you an opportunity just to put your head down and make a lot of whiskey. And that's all we've been really doing for really the last, 10 years. And I take a lot of pride in what we do. The Sonoma bourbon that you're starting with, that I'm now also ingesting as well.
Yeah, cheers, man.
Yeah, cheers. Cheers to everybody out there too. This product is it's a unique one for a lot of reasons, but it's a wheated bourbon made in California. So, a lot of times people's heads sort of shaking, like how, why, who, and it's just you can make bourbon anywhere in America. You don't necessarily have to be from Kentucky.
Well, and of course we love our Kentucky bourbons, but I've loved what you've always done there, and I've always really enjoyed the terroir, the regionality of different whiskeys and bourbons, and what the water and the grain and everything brings to it, and the hand of the distiller and the creativity. And again, if you're just joining us, we think about Sonoma being, and it is such a wine capital. Wines. What's like the closest couple wineries to you? How many?
I mean, we've got Kendall Jackson right up the road from us. You can go ahead to Kendall Jackson.
Right.
We're in Rohnert Park, which is a little tiny town, kind of wedged between Santa Rosa and Petaluma. There's a couple wineries down in Petaluma you can hit up. Yeah, we're on the way in or way out of wine country, what we like to tell people.
Right. So here you are. You decided many years ago, hey, we should have whiskey and a distillery in the Sonoma region. You were really the first to really take it on in this fashion, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely folks who were there before us. I mean, we were lucky to have, the Anchor folks and Charbet and St. George, Jermaine Rabon, these sort of iconic distilleries in California who still exist today. But yeah, we were one of the early ones in Sonoma County in particular. We were one of the first ones out there. And, for me, it just made a lot of sense. I mean, it's hot and cold and hot and cold. I mean, it's perfect weather. Got great access to water. Now we're 100% California grains too. For a long time, we were buying grains from all over the country and parts of the world. Now we're able to source everything from the home state of California. So we take a lot of pride in that, and being able to do that in the heart of wine country, it kind of just ties it all together for me. It's sort of, it reinforces our brand ethos. We like to have a nice green thumb as much as we possibly can. And doing stuff like that, I really just think just makes us a little different than everybody else.
That's it's very exciting. And again, all of your all of your grains, everything grain to glass now pretty much is right there.
Yeah, exactly. And then within the last couple years, I was able to convince a friend of mine to actually open up a malt house on site. So literally in the distillery, like the building next door, we have a malt house there. So that's where we're malting a lot of our barley. We're going to start trying to malt some rye there too. So we're really able to do 100% of our production using California ingredients, which is really nice because it allows you to sort of use the power of the purse string to affect, how things go. The power of the dollar it's a really important thing. And if you can hand it to a farmer who then grows more grains and feeds his family and that sort of perpetual cycle, I think it means something.
Absolutely. And well, let's taste the bourbon together. I know I was tasting it on the rocks. I have a little pour here, neat as well. And let's talk about what makes a California whiskey or a California bourbon just that. I mean, you wanted to put something that was truly California in nature on this, didn't you?
Yeah, I think when anybody goes to set off and create a product, the questions you ask yourself is what's going to make this product different. And if I wanted to make the big guys whiskey, I would have used column stills. I would have sour mashed. I would have probably opened a distillery in Kentucky and called it a day. That would have been how you go about starting a distillery. And for me, born and raised in California, being able to give back to my local community in this sort of small way but important way, creating something that really speaks about California. So California has been on the precipice of many changes in culinary and food and beer and wine and all that sort of stuff. So if you think about the way we've approached those things and then the way I can approach making whiskey, we can be as creative as we want to be. I can use, a similar mash bill that you might see from Kentucky. So like the Sonoma Bourbon, for example, which we were just talking about, that's a wheated bourbon. So that's a very, very traditional style bourbon. It's a wheater. So 70% corn, 25% wheat, 5% malted barley. But unlike trying to give you something that's overtly sweet, I want to make you something that's a little drier. So from my perspective, it actually has this really beautiful sort of like pungent, sort of like dry spice on the back end. And that comes from the fact that we fully ferment out all of our sugars. We distill on the grain, and we're bringing you something that has this really sort of like drying factor in your mouth. And that, I'm targeting that flavor in my fermentations. I'm targeting that flavor in my stills and my barreling. And those things I think are going to help make that whiskey just a little different. And ultimately trying to target something that has a bit more dynamic flavor to it. We also use traditional pot stills, so it has more viscosity. So like all those things are these little tiny tools we use in our beautiful distillery to do that.
Yeah, and those stills, those have always been something that you've really been a focal point of what you've put into your whiskey making.
Yeah, so I mean, we've always used pot stills since day one. We've used traditional pot stills. A lot of times when people start distilleries, you sort of have a couple different approaches, 2 or 3 approaches. You can do a pot still or a column still, or you can do some sort of a hybrid between the two. And I've always used the alembic, which is a very traditional still you'd see using for cognac or Calvados. And to make an American whiskey, in particular a bourbon in this style, is really, really different. It lends more towards that sort of cognac, that viscosity, that high ester, that really super flavorful spirit. But it has some density to it that you can't fake it. And that's just from this archaic style still that runs this product through, and it doesn't over rectify it, and it leaves a really nice sort of full-bodied whiskey.
It is, and you've always gone for that flavor, and it's always really come through in a really elegant fashion. That the sweetness off the top, it goes into something drier. Really great spices on the end, even maybe like some hints of clove and some other spices kind of there on the end, right?
Yeah, a lot of that's also barrel influence too. So we're using a 3rd degree char barrel for all of these. We have in the last couple of years started messing around with some different chars just to sort of see if we can identify different flavors. But I've always used a 3rd degree char. It's a nice mid-level char. It doesn't overly give that sort of like super like dense tannin char flavor to it. Lets the dry aging of the wood really sort of pop out. And that's kind of what I was targeting in a lot of these.
Absolutely. Some maybe even a little creme brulee. I mean, there's a nice creaminess with a little bit of that char, I think, on top, that kind of a burnt sugar, but just it's really beautiful. It's such a very elegant bourbon, and this is delicious. Where can people find, I guess, really all of your products, but we should probably mention that they can find them where?
Sure. So in the state of California, we actually are allowed to ship. So as a result of this whole COVID situation and all the madness that's going on, and for everybody who's watching, I hope your families and friends are healthy and happy. But in the state of California, we can sell it to you directly. You can sign up to our club. We actually have a club we just relaunched recently, which is super exciting. All the information's on sonomadistillingcompany.com. K&L Wines is a big one for us too. Bitters and Bottles, Bottle Barn. These are a lot of local purveyors and local retailers who sell our products. There's a lot of people who don't sell online in the state of California, but those are some of the big ones who do. Sip Whiskey is another one down in Southern California in particular who does really well. Out of the state, you got Astor and Binny's, and so the ones that people think of. And people ask me all the time, like, what's exciting? What should we be looking for? And I always tell them we're doing single barrels a lot. So Astor and Binny's, these folks are buying barrels from us, putting their name on it. And so when I get a chance to work with those buyers, Nima and Brett and folks, we're identifying barrels that will really fit their clientele and their palate. And I'm excited to be able to do that. So just keep on checking their websites because you'll find that stuff from time to time too. Excellent.
And I put your website up there, sonomadistillingcompany.com. Be sure and check that out. That'll lead you a lot of great places. And again, if you are in California, we know a lot of the viewers we have are in California. You can ship through the state. That before COVID, this was something that was not a law on the books. Now, what's that look like? How is that to see that law open up for you in California?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that it had to bring such a catastrophe to do it. I mean, it's a part of an emergency action that was taken by the governor. We're grateful that he did it. As a distillery who has relied largely on our channel sales, like it's certainly been something that we're not really super ready for. Admittedly, all of a sudden to start selling online, we had to find shippers and online fulfillment and all these things, right? But now we're doing it, and we're finding it to be really successful for us. Mm-hmm. And it's a good way for us to send people's bottles to their homes. And so for a long time, the only way you could buy bottles was actually come to our tasting room. And even before that, when I first started, we couldn't even sell you bottles. So like we had, for a long time, we were just pushing people to the liquor store down the block and saying, hey, go check them out. And so it's really nice to have that touch. And that's really, again, as I mentioned, this, the Whiskey Club we're offering and the online bottle sales. It really lets us connect with the buyers and have an honest conversation.
What's the Whiskey Club allow people to do? What's that?
So what I do is I'm the owner of this club. I'm the owner of the distillery, but I'm the owner of this club. So I get a chance to choose special releases that really mean something to me. Like the first release we're doing for the club this time is a 5-year-old single barrel cask strength. So I found a 53-gallon barrel. I absolutely loved it. It's a rye whiskey. I pulled it at cask strength, about 122 proof, 61% ABV. And it just has this really beautiful spice, but it also balances the alcohol because of the age. And it's just something really fun. So that's our first club release. So all of our club members are going to have first allocation to purchase that. Probably a couple weeks or 2-3 weeks later, they'll be able to pick it up online. Generally, our club members get discounts, 15s and 20% discounts. Eventually, we'll have parties and things where we can engage people at the distillery. Because, we've got this space that we just would love to host. It's just now we're sort of handicapped to be able to do that.
So I like that, like what you've done there at the club. So you've really taken the idea of wine clubs that we would see in places like Sonoma or Napa in California, and they're if people that are big fans of Sonoma, they get to actually try these wonderful bourbons that you've picked out as single barrels.
Yeah, and then a lot of times people are just traveling these locations. They try it. They come out here for a wedding or anniversary or whatever, and they discover us. And it's part of that discovery that they get to now take home, which for a long time we would just have to sell you a bottle. You'd have to take it home on your own. Now we can actually ship it to you. So that's awesome.
That's really cool. So that club just started just recently.
Like literally within the last month, we just launched it up. We've got a small group of folks who have believed in us since day one, who seem like they've re-signed immediately. And now we're just kind of growing it slowly but surely. And, I think what's going to happen nationally, I don't have a magic ball here or anything, but I do think that there's going to be a push to ship nationally. I mean, the idea of state by state reciprocity is potentially going to happen because there are 2,000 distilleries in the United States, and right now, all of us are feeling this thing. It doesn't matter how good you're doing. You could always have been doing better in this environment. And so the fact that, like, if California now allows shipping, and let's say that, you know, New York allows shipping next, or Illinois allows shipping next, why don't we let you ship to us and we'll ship to you? And then that conversation is probably happening at a much higher level than me.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that it does, because then, you know, again, then we're connecting with people in their homes. We're doing something unique. We're not knocking out the legs of our retailers who've been supporting us since day one. If anything, we're just amassing more fans who will go back to those retailers and purchase it when the club is not currently going. So I'm hoping that's what happens nationally. We'll have to see. I
am too, because again, for those people who don't know, it is the case that for every state, you really can't ship. You could really never ship within each state, and you definitely can't ship as a distiller across state lines. There's no state where that's the case, right?
Yeah, I mean, and the only, it's not even a state. DC is the only area that they really, it's sort of like this big gray area, because it's not a state, it's sort of a territory of sorts. But I will say, I mean, it's just, it's tough, because as you try to figure out what the landscape looks like, you know, I can only say that it just makes a hell of a lot of sense to me that, you know, there are 50 states. We should start normalizing what these laws are. And there are some states that have it even worse than us. They have these crazy laws. You got Pennsylvania, who's starting to loosen up a little bit, but it's a little more crazy. All these blue states, generally speaking, are all going through state liquor stores. You know, if you got somebody telling you what you're allowed to buy and what you're not allowed to buy, it makes it really difficult for the rest of us to compete.
Right. No, and we do hope that the laws will loosen up to help craft distillers, because though a lot of people obviously have been enjoying a good, maybe extra pour or two during COVID, because the schedule has changed a little bit. Maybe they're working from home. They're not having to drive back and forth to work. Yeah. In general, the scene for craft distilling is still something that there's some real fears about this, right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, and we are not a larger distillery who has, you know, years of operating income just sitting aside. I mean, we are actively out there every single day trying to make whiskey and pay our employees. You know, lucky for us at this moment, we're fully employed. Right. And our staff our goal is just to make good whiskey and make premium California whiskey. So, you know, we're going to continue to do that, and, you know, we'll have to see how this whole thing progresses. But, you know, I'm just hoping everybody's staying healthy and keeping their 6 feet.
Absolutely, and at the same time, you're enjoying a whiskey 6 feet away from someone. Keep supporting some great craft whiskeys like Sonoma Distilling Company, because they're doing a great job, and always offering something new. You know, these craft distilleries like you all, the ones that have done a great job with it. So many of them, you're really speaking the terroir. You're speaking the passion of something different than just the normal pour you might get. So
yeah, I mean, we want to do that, and I think it's a really good point you bring up. I mean, no matter what you're doing, if you're supporting craft, you're doing the right thing. I mean, there are 2,000 distillers of the United States. No matter where these people are who are trying products or talking or listening to us talk tonight, go find your craft distillery, because there's a lot of folks out there who really could use it. I mean, every single bottle counts. Like we as distillers and we as owners feel it. You can see it. You know, when you see those onesie twosie orders come through, it really feels like you're like, oh shit, I can pay people today. I'm moving in the right direction. So yeah, I'm excited for that opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, well said, man. And this is a lot of fun. Again, if you're just joining us, it's Adam Spiegel, owner, head distiller, whiskey maker at Sonoma Distilling Company there in Rohnert Park, and we're tasting through all of his core whiskeys. And I've just poured a little of the rye whiskey, neat. And,
yeah.
Already enjoying a sip of this. This is, you start your very first one that you made. Was it a bourbon rye? I'm trying to remember which one.
It was a rye. No, it was the first one was a rye. Yeah. So we sort of went for like the hardest thing out of the gate that we possibly could. So this is 100% rye. Doesn't have any corn. Doesn't have any barley in it. You know, I really wanted to accentuate that rye bread, that burnt rye spice on there. That was 100% what I was going for. And, you know, the best way to do that is to not convolute the flavors with different grains. I love rye whiskeys that have corn and barley in them too. But for this example, I really wanted to bring that dynamic, spicy, Anish-driven spirit. Hi, Molly. Thanks, Molly.
Yeah, Molly Roman, thanks for Molly's giving you some good kudos. We've had Molly on a couple times on our show. Thanks for watching, and I think Molly's getting back open soon. If not, if she hasn't already, I think she was opening yesterday, I believe.
I hope so. I mean, I wish everybody who owns a bar and restaurant out there the best. I mean, we're all going to get back out there together. It's going to be really interesting and fun. But
Molly's a big fan, and we're a big fan of Molly's. And also a question from Aaron. Any idea when you're open up for tours?
It's a really good question, and we are allowed by law or by order to be able to start opening up. The concern we have is a couplefold. First of all, we're sort of waiting and seeing what's happening. We have no idea what the landscape's going to look like. We have no idea what all of this is going to become. And so we really just want to wait. We want to wait until, the trend lines continue to move in a much more healthy and safe environment. We want to wait to see if this lasts, and God forbid there's a second wave, which, people are starting to think there might be one. Right. And then the other part of that is that we don't want to cheapen the experience. We want, when people are coming into the tasting room, that they're really enjoying, the camaraderie with other people they don't know, that they came to the distillery with. We want to have people there who are able to engage and not sort of feel like there's any barriers to stop them. So until we can do that, I think we're just going to sort of pause on the tours. I'm hoping in the fall we'll be able to get back in there again and do it all over again, because it was such a great part of the experience. Like, you got a chance to see a still and smell a fermentation, and that connection point, like, there's nothing I can do to replicate that. We are talking about doing like a virtual tour or virtual tasting, where I'll, physically lead people through a tour and then sit down and do a tasting. That is going to be the closest connection we're going to have to me sitting and doing a thing like this, where I can host folks and we can talk. We're getting that set up as we speak, and we'll be selling those on our website. Again, California only. But like stuff like that it's until you can actually get there again, it's gonna be tough. So I appreciate the question, and we look forward to getting back up there as soon as possible.
No, without a doubt. And great to have Aaron watching there from California as well. And we're trying the rye. I love there's almost a real beautiful spicy, yet a little bit of a buttery note, maybe a hint of graham cracker. There's a lot of like this beautiful pie crust, like you were saying. There's a lot happening here. This is really lovely.
Thanks. Yeah, and I always tell people too, I mean, food pairing wise, my bourbons I always tend to like with more like sort of poultry driven, you can do it with a turkey or a chicken, some duck fat and stuff like that. Like that's my bourbon. My rye is a bit more spicier. But I can tell you that when you're doing these blends, the hardest part of my job, I always tell people that blending whiskey is a lot like trying to get a bunch of kindergartners to line up. I have a 2-year-old, so I'm not there yet, even though I can hear her literally screaming upstairs at her mother. But the reality is that getting children to line up is so much like a blend, because you've got barrels that all have these sort of nano differences between them, and they all have their own personalities, and they all don't want to blend well and pair well. And so the rye is really difficult, because as I go to evaluate these barrels, there are some barrels that they taste great, but they have this heat to them. You're like, that is just not going to marry with the rest of the herd. Like, it's not going to be good. It's not ready yet. Maybe it needs more time. Maybe it needs to be at a lower ABV. You have to make these sort of decisions that are difficult. And this rye in particular is a tough one. But now I think 10 years in, we sort of figured out the recipe that works for it. So 80% unmalted, 20% rye malt. These are all aged between 2.5 and 4 years at this moment. And I think it's just a whiskey that tastes like rye, which is really nice and redeeming, because that's what I was going for.
Yes, it definitely does. So nice spice, but also balanced by some really great softness. Again, it's 80% rye and 20% malted rye.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that blend? What were you that recipe? What were you really trying to do?
Yeah, so a lot of it was trial and error in the beginning. So in 2008, 2009, then leading into 2010, just trialing out a bunch of different grain mash bills, You can try mash bills with slightly more than the 20% to 25%. You can try less. You know, at 20%, you really get this sort of like nice chocolatey rye back end on it, but it doesn't have any of that overt like super chocolatiness that you can get. So if you think of like, I mean, I love Old Potrero, but you think of like Old Potrero rye, it's 100% rye malt. So it's really, really chocolatey, really, really sugar driven. And if you want to have balance and you want to have layers of flavor on them, you want to have unmalted and malted rye. And so to figuring out that balance between the two was difficult. And so for a long time, we were getting our rye malt out of the UK because I love that really sort of like that dark, rich chocolate. Think of like a pale ale, like a beer from London. Trying to get that into a whiskey, you know, was really fun and gave it that balance I wanted.
So obviously great by itself, really delicious. Just sipper. Are there any favorite cocktails you put this one into?
Yeah, totally. I mean, for me, especially as it's getting hotter, I mean, I've been trying to convince the wife for a long time, let me buy a slushy machine, because all I will literally do is just take like, you know, Fever Tree ginger beer and just dump that in there and just slushy it up. But like, you know, I think, you know, a really good cold, like ginger beer on the rocks and rye whiskey, you really can't beat that. Sazerac, old fashioned, Vauquerès, you can get really nice with it because it's 100% rye. So like, that's why I think a lot of bartenders and bar people like this product in particular, is that it's a very pure spirit. And so when I cook, and I cook a lot at home, I always sort of talk about that, but like, I rather use like spices versus spice blends. Because as you use spice blends, it tends to present the product that tastes sort of, you know, like somebody else created the blend for you. Like if you want to go ahead and do it, you want a pure base. And so that's why I think the rye does fairly well for that.
Yes. Yeah. It has the spice, great balance, some great sweetness, some butteriness, but also a real pure. It is extremely pure. I mean, it's very approachable and really dynamic. It's delicious.
And we talked about it too. This is the base for the truffle. So we were at some point,
You're reading my mind. I hear that you're going to have a new truffle. Let's talk about the black truffle, because I tried it a couple years ago and I loved it. What do you do to make a truffle whiskey? How does that happen?
Yeah. So first of all, let me start by saying that I'm the ass who didn't send you a bottle of truffle. So that's my bad. That's my B. But no, it exists. It's real. So what we did, that has sort of built its own sort of cult following for it. And we do sell it on our website. If you go to sonomadistillingcompany.com, you can see we do sell the truffle. But the creation of that was based on the idea of sort of taking that food world and that whiskey world and merging those two things together. So a good friend of mine named Pam was working at a bar up in Healdsburg, and she helped sort of think of the idea of what to do with a Perigord mushroom, literally from France, you know, the $800 to $1,000 a pound truffle. And I was telling her I like to cook with my mushrooms, my whiskey at home. And she ran to the kitchen and threw a sliver of black truffle in the bottle. She's like, let's just see how it turns out. Came down to the distillery. Oh, love it. Yeah. She's like, well, if you like the umami-ness of that other mushroom, let's see what this other thing does. Came to the distillery and she's like, you got to try this. So the black truffle rye was sort of born there. You know, it's this really fun, umami, seaweedy, but rye spicy concoction. And so forever and a day, we've always put in the back of the bottle, thank you, Pam. So when you buy the black truffle rye, you'll see that on there because Pam's a goddess. But yeah, I mean, that sort of stuff, you know, is something that a craft guy can do. We can do that because we're small, because I can buy $800 to $1,000 truffles and fly them in from France. You know, they get first class seats and free drinks. And you know,
free drink, right?
Yeah, exactly. Everybody gets free drinks in first class. And it's great, and it's a really fun product. We actually infuse black truffles in a fully aged 3 to 4 year old rye whiskey for anywhere from 6 months to 8 months. And then all of that truffleness just sort of gets sucked out of it. And a lot of people are like, what do you do with them afterwards? And I'm like, there's nothing left in them. They're cardboard. They literally have no flavor left because all of that flavor goes into the rye whiskey,
and
and it's a really, really fun thing. It makes the whiskey. It actually kind of feels like it softens the whiskey because we bottle it at 100 proof, and it just softens this thing up. So I will send you a bottle. I owe you one as soon as you try it.
I loved it before. Thank you, Adam. It was just the ways the truffles spoke with the rye. It was just like the combination that was meant to be, as they used to say about the chocolate and peanut butter with Reese's peanut butter cup. This was a combination it was meant to be, and it's just something you wouldn't expect. But then it's like, wow, this is. And when you infuse these, you've already emptied the barrels, or do you infuse them? Where do you actually infuse these?
So I tried doing it in the barrel, and the problem with the barrel is it's like the semi-permeable membrane. It's just like constantly breathing, and so like it's diffusing water, but diffusing alcohol and air, and so I lost a lot of that truffliness at that point. So I started doing blends, putting those blends in tanks, and then those tanks are where you infuse the truffle in there, and that's where you get, a closed environment that's non-flavor impacted by just the truffle and whiskey getting to know one another. And 6 to 8 months later, you got yourself a really fun whiskey.
Yes, it's delicious. It's one of those flavors. There's flavored whiskeys out there, and there's some that are doing interesting things, but this is truly one of the most interesting flavored infused. We'll say not flavored, but this is actually infused with a new flavor that there is. So well done with that. That's an annual release then?
It's an annual release, yeah. So we started releasing it again last year. Got a new batch that's going into bottle this year. So we're still actually selling through some stuff from last year because we released it at the tail end of 2019. And so, yeah, it's available. There's retailers who still have it too. I know some retailers. You type in Black Truffle Rye on Google, you'll find a bunch of retailers potentially who can ship to you. There's some folks out there who've had some fun with it.
Only in California, man. That's the greatest thing. That'll be a lot of fun to try it. And your innovations after you had the release of the bourbon and the rye, they continued. I remember 5 years ago or so, you were just about to release the Cherrywood, and I was there with you at your the older spot you had, and you let me try this, and I was blown away. We're going to try the Cherrywood Rye first on these. What is the Cherrywood Rye whiskey?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So I get this question a lot. Do you use cherrywood barrels or do you use cherrywood? And the answer is we use cherrywood to smoke a malted barley. So what ends up happening is for the early years, we were buying this from a supplier. And then we realized, hey, we can do that ourselves. And not only can we do it ourselves, we should do that ourselves because we're able to then affect how long it's smoked for. We can buy local cherry wood. So we were buying cherry trees grown in California. And then we were doing that smoking off-site for a long time. Within the last year, we actually brought it on-site. So we have a 1 ton shipping with an old shipping container that we turned into a smoker. And we can smoke about a ton a week right now. We can actually eventually size it up to 2 tons a week. And we're using California cherry trees. That process literally is laying a fully malted barley onto the floor of a smoker. You close the smoker off. You cold smoke it for about 40 to 45 hours. And it's cold smoke. So the goal is like not to burn or singe the grains, but just to bring that sort of like beautiful smoky flavor into it. And then you incorporate. Yeah, exactly. And then once the flavor's in there, then you use those grains into your mash. So our Cherrywood Rye and then our Cherrywood smoked bourbon, both of those incorporate that Cherrywood product. And that was really unique because I mean, for me, it seemed like a natural thing, right? You've got maraschino used in cocktails and almost every cocktail you can think of, right? Why not just put that into the whiskey? So, by putting in the whiskey, you've already taken a lot of those steps out, and then you can go ahead and you just need less fluff to make a good cocktail if you're going to make a cocktail. So the Cherrywood Rye, which is in my glass now too, that's 80% rye, 10% wheat, and then 10% Cherrywood smoked barley. So it's got a little bit of that rye spice. It's got some wheat that gives it some really nice sort of vanillins and English toffees and sort of like a froth of a cherry soda. And then it has that Cherrywood smoked barley.
Yeah, like that nice dark cherry, creamy and kind of almost cocktail. It's almost like it is a whiskey, but in many ways it is a cocktail in a bottle already, and then you would take it. What would you make it if you were making a cocktail? What would you make it?
I mean, this is the easiest Manhattan to make in the world. It's very, very simple. You know, I would use a Italian dry vermouth, something that's sort of not so overtly sweet. Right. Some people I know have also played around with using a little bit of dry vermouth in there too. I was mentioning the sweet, but you can also do a little bit of dry in there as well. So Manhattans do really, really well with this one too. A Sazerac will do very well with that too. I mean, imagine any cocktail that calls for maraschino, you can do this and whiskey. It's a pretty fun one. The highball with this and the Cherrywood smoked bourbon, because of the smoky element, really comes out well. So get yourself a good seltzer water. The Soda Stream has sort of been my best friend during this whole COVID period. But get some bubbly water, ice, and whiskey, and you are good to go.
A nice little sort of a grown-up soda of sorts that's just a beautiful highball. Did you say you got the slushy machine, or you're going to get the slushy machine?
I want to get the slushy machine. Justification for it when you have to social distance is made only elongated the period of time between now and future Adam slushy time, but it's coming. I'm waiting on the day.
What's the first cocktail? Once you get it, what's the first cocktail you're gonna make?
I'm just gonna get a case of ginger beer and just pour it straight in there. And when I was in Kentucky, I had a chance to try a ginger slushy, and I was just like, where have I been? Like, why have I not done this? And it was like I went to Willett, and there was a barbecue place like right down the block, or close by, and it was just sitting at the bar, and they had a slushy machine. I'm like, what is happening here? And why have I never done this before? And 5 years later, I'm still trying to convince the missus.
Well, it'll be fun to see what you do when you get one. I'm sure you'll create some amazing cocktails. And
I promise to share all my ventures on all my Instagram pages and stuff. No problem whatsoever.
This is great stuff. As we look at the Sonoma wine region, I mean, how is the region you are in famous for so many world-known wineries, and you have tourists coming around from across the globe. How has that inspired what you do and
sure. I think it's just pushing the envelope. What's made Sonoma wine and Sonoma beer and Sonoma food so good is that we're always just pushing and pushing and pushing. I mean, Sonoma wines in particular, bringing in grapes that were grown in these historic regions in France and Italy, and bringing them to the United States and growing them in a brand new region, and how they're displayed. We can poo-poo, oak Chardonnays all you want, but for a certain clientele, that's all they want. That's all they want. That's all they get. And in the California region is what brought that to the mainstay. IPAs, hazies. That's California beer. Like, that's Lagunitas, that's Russian River Brewing Company. You think about these iconic breweries, Sierra Nevada, obviously well before that, and Anchor Steam and all them. I mean, you look at these folks who you look at for inspiration, and all I see are people who are just doing something different and saying, hey, I see how you're doing it, and I'll raise you one by doing it my own way. And one of the things I think that's really important, you think about like the example, right? So Sierra Nevada has been releasing their beer recipe since day one. They're like, since the 70s, they're like, here's how you make our beer. And here's the yeast we use. We're using a Pac-Man yeast. We're using this barley. But you don't have our equipment, our people, our rest times, or all of that other things are not something that you can replicate. So for us, we do all the mash bills right there on the glass. 80, 10,
right
10.
There. Yes.
Super transparent. I care about what goes into my food. So if I want to look at a menu, I want to know what's in my food. I want to know what's in my whiskey. And I think that's really important. And, that level of transparency, I think, is something I'm hoping that other people will consider doing as well.
Excellent. And the whiskeys are so approachable by themselves, but obviously you've always put a big emphasis on pairings with regard to food with your whiskeys.
Yeah, and that's stuff that you can glean from the website. That stuff we do conversations like this. I'm looking forward to getting back on the road and doing whiskey dinners all over again. The ability to tell people about food and pairings and how to get those two things to work together. It looks really fun. We opened a new market about less than a year ago in Missouri, and we're actually selling really, really well. And I'm stoked to get out there and just, I mean, you know, not just the big towns, but the small ones too, and just talk about whiskey and talk about what makes us different. And, you know, we'll try to convert as many people as we can, but, you know, that's part of the fun of this whole thing.
Yeah, it is. And we've loved featuring Sonoma Distilling Company whiskeys on our Why Whiskey Educational Tour there in California. We've been really proud to feature that, and hopefully we'll be back on the road with our whiskey education as well there in California and many other places. But for now, it's fun to do them virtually. You've been doing some virtual tastings like this one, but you're going to be doing them for some of your club, maybe?
Yeah, well, so our goal is to start actually developing a tasting kit, which is going to go live in the next week or so, and it's going to allow people in California to buy a kit, and then once or twice a month, I'm going to host a tasting where I can walk them through our distillery, walk them through the spirits. They can join it with their friends. You know, I've been doing a little online poker with my friends, and what we do is we have a little Zoom on the side, and so we get a chance to talk and, you know, congregate there and, you know, talk and all that. And so we'll be hosting a place for people to ask questions and kind of get geeky about it. But if you want to host your friends and have everybody come to the table and have fun, you'll have that opportunity too. And so we're going to see how that goes. I mean, that's the best way we can do this. We're not we're not creating the wheel here. There's a lot of people who've done it before. And if I can still stay connected to people, even, you know, a couple 100 miles away or 1,000 miles away, why not?
Excellent stuff, man. That'll be exciting to see what you do. All right, so we're going to go into the Cherrywood smoked bourbon here. I have on the lineup. It's sort of the same process you do with the rye. You're making happen with the bourbon. Yeah.
So whereas the rye is a bit spicier and meant to be, you know, a bit more of the cherrywood on the finish, which is why I actually didn't include the word smoked on the product. It's just Cherrywood Rye. This Cherrywood smoked bourbon was meant to be smokier. So 67% corn, 20% rye, 13% Cherrywood smoked barley. So it's 3% higher on the smoke. But because it's corn-based, it has less of that influence of because bourbon in particular, but all corn whiskeys generally glean a lot of flavor from either the barrel or the other grains, the secondary and tertiary grains that are in there. And so this one in particular gets a lot more of that smokiness that comes popping out of the back end of it because of the fact that it's corn-based. So we like that smokiness to it. It really brings well, it marries well, especially if you're doing like family dinners. You know, this is great for like Thanksgiving time. You're talking about like, you know, turkey dinners with cranberry sauce. Cherrywood smoked bourbon does great.
This is a good Thanksgiving pairing, but tasty any time of the year. But you like this one on Thanksgiving a lot, then? I do.
It tastes like a holiday celebration. I mean, you can drink this year round. I mean, people who like barbecue, you know, I had some Korean short ribs the other day with this, and I was the happiest person alive, especially with some of that. That was those little chilies on the back end of it too. It gave it a little bit of spice, and it was fun. And you know that. You know, I use this sometimes in my brines. So like a lot of times I'll make brines at home and I'll pour a little bit in there just to get some of that smoky flavor in there. Sort of like instead of using liquid smoke, you can kind of use this other thing because you don't need liquid smoke anyway. This does great. And it's really, again, it's fun to find ways to sort of, you know, put into your food. And there are ways to do food pairings with whiskey just like you do wine. So why not?
This is really nice. I like the direction it goes with that Cherrywood smoked barley and some real candy notes, maybe even a little butterscotch. There's a lot of depth to this. I mean, there's a lot of places this goes on the palate.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I like whiskeys that have lots of flavor, and I like things that have like all of our whiskeys are like onions. Like you taste the first thing, and you want to keep pulling and pulling. And letting it sort of chew. And the more you do that Kentucky chew where you're sitting there and it just lets the whiskey sort of open up. And it means I did my job right. Like that's the best indication that I did my job right, is that at the end of the day, you're feeling like you're sort of having an experience with the whiskey.
So we're going to be looking at with the club some single barrels, another truffle release. Any other whiskey releases you're able to tell us about that might be on the horizon that you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, we've been holding back some stock of some stuff too. So I kind of knew this club was coming. So I've got some of last year's wheat release. So I've got some wheat whiskey from last year. So it's a whiskey that's been aged actually in used bourbon barrels and then finished in some cognac barrels. So that's a real fun one. I think the more and more I can find sort of these fun, because I'm tasting 200 barrels a week now. So to be sitting in a rick house and actually tasting through and evaluating barrels, I'm going to find some good ones in there. So a bottled in bond is definitely on the horizon. This one I just mentioned, the 5-year-old. So age statement product, cask strength or regular strength. Those are going to be some fun ones to try, and just constantly keeping up. And we normally will be shuffling in fresh releases of all this stuff too. So you're getting the most up-to-date release of our rye and our bourbon and our Cherrywood Rye, when we release these other products. So that should be really fun.
Congratulations on your growth. I mean, you've really grown this in a beautiful way. And again, the new place that you're in now, it's how big is the still? It's a much bigger still.
Yeah. So I've always done the Olympics. So I had a 125 gallon still to start, moved into a 250 gallon still. Then I bought 4 250 gallon stills. Now I have a 3,000 gallon Scottish still that I got from Forsyth's. So we've got tools. I've got these things, right? I've had the best environment to make whiskey that I could possibly think of, and running them through a beautiful Scottish still either once or twice, or running through it once and then going through a smaller alembic has allowed us to make whiskeys a little differently. And so we're going to continue to do it there. Our new facility, even though it's larger, it still uses a lot of the techniques that I've accrued over the last 10 years.
Congratulations on that and all your growth.
Thank you. I mean, thank you.
Great to have you on here.
No, I'm happy to be on it, and it's great too. I mean, it's been fun to see also how the BourbonBlog has evolved too. I mean, you're still wearing bow ties, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's been fun to see, Thank you. The biggest thing that I'm constantly trying to do, and I was telling you about this as well. It's I want to try and demystify whiskey. Like, how can you get people on it? The education course you guys have been offering has been great. I mean, to throw people in there and how they become stewards of whiskey, that's great. Educate. But I'm lucky because I get a chance to talk to distillers all day long. I mean, I was on the phone last week with my friend John Jeffries and Todd Leopold, and if I have questions, I can ask these people. I can call them up. I have their phone numbers, and I say, "Hey guys, blah 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 blah." And so I'm starting to try and figure out how I can do that to educate, because that's ultimately what I want to do is educate people about the thing I love, which is whiskey. So I'm looking at we're doing an Instagram live tomorrow with Robin Robinson.
Cool.
Should be super exciting. He wrote a great book about whiskey. Yeah. I just want to ask him questions. I did one a couple weeks ago with Jared on our Instagram live. Tomorrow is going to be with Robin. And, the goal is just to take off all of this, this cloak of crap that is, pretentiousness and apprehension about not knowing things, and just ask good questions. So people are invited to come. You're basically a fly on the wall when two people who know a lot about whiskey get a chance to sit down and talk a lot about whiskey. And I think it's gonna be really fun. So I encourage people to come tomorrow. It'll be on our Instagram live page tomorrow evening. We'll do a post about it, and bring your questions. And I'm really interested to know from his perspective, what are some cool stuff he saw out there? He wrote a book about worldwide whiskey. What are great things he saw? What are things that I can take back to my distillery and help me make my whiskey better? So those are the stuff I'll be asking. And you're doing it in your own way too, and I applaud you for that.
Thank you. That means a lot, Adam. What time will that be happening tomorrow?
Tomorrow at about right around 3 o'clock Western time, so that's about 6 o'clock Eastern time. I was trying to catch Robin before his dinner time. He's not a young man, so
it's on your Instagram there, Sonoma Whiskey, at Sonoma Whiskey. You got to follow them on Instagram, and you're trying to do that every Tuesday around 3 o'clock your time. Then.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and keep up the frequency of it too. And it's a good day because it's not like a heavy drinking day. Ideally, people are gonna get a chance to actually grab a glass of something that they like. And I encourage you to drink all sorts of whiskeys, stuff that I make, stuff that other people make. Bring those questions, because that's what's going to help educate me about the things you like, so I can help you find stuff about mine that you like. or my friends' brands who also make stuff you might like. So we're all out there just trying to understand this thing we love, which is called whiskey.
That is so cool. And you mentioned Todd Leopold earlier. He's actually going to be our guest after your show, which is going to be, again, 6 p.m. Eastern at 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. We're going to have Todd Leopold here. So what a nice coincidence.
Todd is by far one of the nicest people in this industry, the most humble person in the world. And for a person who, if I were in his position, I'd be standing on the rooftop screaming at everybody like, I know everything. I know everything about whiskey. I know everything about whiskey. All of you are stupid. I know everything about whiskey. That's what I would do, because if you look at what he's made, the stills, he's got the 3-chamber still, he's got the malt house on site, which is like grown like crazy. You're gonna have some fun, and he's making some good product, and he's making it in a way that's very intentioned. And I respect people who come out with a purpose to do something, and they sort of set it in motion. I really respect that.
Awesome. No, we have a really great week here lined up, and it's awesome to start out with you for our Monday, and then you go to Todd on Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Colin Spoolman from Kings County will be on. So we have some great. I'm going to get to taste and talk with some great people this week, and it meant a lot to have you as our start kickoff of the week, Adam. This is really
good.
Been fun, and definitely everyone. Again, if you're still watching, you've been watching, you can always go back, watch this. This will be permanently on YouTube, Twitter, and on Facebook. And also check out SonomaDistillingCompany.com to learn all about what Adam is doing there. And Adam, I'm really looking forward, hopefully in the next, I don't know when, several months, maybe a little bit longer, but at some point I will be back in California in the near future, and I look forward to seeing you in person and having a drink with you in person.
We'll have one of my annual cigars or something. We'll sit outside and have another one. It'll be a nice way to keep up the tradition. It'd be nice if you could do like 5 years ago and then like the today one. If you could put them side by side, that'd be adorable.
Yeah, whiskey's kept us young, I'm sure.
It's an embalming fluid, right? So we are hopefully. I mean, I finally got some grays. That's the only.
I was about to say, your beard looks. I mean, I have a little more than you do, I think. Your beard looks really good. It's a good looking beard there.
I mean, that's been my goal of COVID, is to figure out how to take care of myself. So I've got like the efficiency haircut. I had my brother buzz my head the other day, and like, if I can keep my facial hair, I'll be all right.
I like it. You still pull out those Cuban cigars from time to time?
Yeah, I've been lucky. Every once in a while, people seem to give me a nice gift. I mean, it's always nice to trade. You know, that's a good one to sort of, like for like. So yeah, the Cubans have been they've never gone away yet. I've been very, very happy to get those cigars, and I look forward to doing it again.
Very nice. Later tonight, I'll try to put up on our Bourbon Blog social media the video of us from 5 years ago with the cigars. I'll bust that out as well.
There's love that.
Hey, it's great to see you, Adam. Thank you all, everyone watching. And again, come back almost every night, Sunday through Thursday, and many Saturdays we do a cigar episode as well. BourbonBlog.com/live. Great seeing you, Adam. This was a lot of fun.
Cheers, Thanks for having me. Cheers. Thank you. I look forward to doing it again.